well, it was really strange because we were talking about benchmarks and ordnance survey and everything, and lo and behold, on Irish history or Irish history was a benchmark, a stone with that symbol on, and it
Ah,
was
right.
in
Yeah.
Phoenix Park. Yeah,
Oh, nice.
because it was, it was part of the crown.
And obviously, where you
You know,
see
the
the ordnance
crown.
service, where you see the ordnance survey mark, the British Empire's been, and obviously Ireland
Yeah,
was part of the British Empire at one point. So there you go.
yeah, and
Um,
it still is according to some people.
oh, don't upset. Whatever you do, don't upset Henry. He's already threatening to
Yeah,
leave these
they
grasses
reckon
permanently.
Dublin is still the crown. It's still like that.
Right, I think you need to.
Beyond the
Is it
pale.
is that beyond the pale? I tell you
Yeah.
what, I can't even say. I'm
It's all
shocked.
right. It's just issues. That's all.
Yeah, you definitely have got issues, Anne. You issues with your identity.
Well,
Right, anything else, Anne?
yeah, I met this woman in Phoenix Park, and she was a real rebel. I mean, she was only about 30, and she was saying about, Dublin is still the crown. She said, "It's still the crown. Look at it. Look at it."
Anne, you're losing us all now. I'm lost. Right, I really am. Right, okay then. We're going to go on to somebody who can talk sense. Goff.
Oh, there's far too much politics coming into these lectures, and I've got no archaeology for you.
Oh, that was
And look what
archaeology.
you've done. Look what you've done. You've rattled him now, right? You're talking about Ireland and politics and all the rest of it, and it's live. And what are people going to think, right? Stop it, Anne, right? If you're going to talk about films. What's the latest film you've been to, Goff?
I've been since, what was it?
Napoleon.
No.
Oh,
well,
Atomic Bomb.
yeah, Oppenheimer.
Oppenheimer, yeah. Fair enough. And we're waiting for Ghostbusters, and we're waiting for June to come out. Those are the next ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it advertised as June 2. I didn't think it was June 2. I thought it was a remake of the first film, but then again, you know more than me.
We had that 2 years ago.
Right, okay.
Where you been?
Good, that one.
Where you been, Carl?
No, I haven't been. I didn't. Oh, hang on. Let me work this out. So the Dune that come out in the 80s.
Yeah.
And you'd say that another Dune come out 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's going to be June 2, and this is June 3.
No. Well, yeah. Yeah, I suppose it is, yeah. But they're all something else.
Okay, fair enough. You've
not
lost
like James Bond 7, is it? It's something else. Name. Anyway, no, I got no archaeology, no.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
Fair enough. Right, you can't talk about politics, Henry, because Goff will get really upset and he'll start telling people. Right, Henry, to give us some news, and it better not be anything that we're doing tonight.
How about an ancient bronze hand made with the longest example of Visigoth script, 2,000 years old, found in northern Spain?
Right, I've never heard of Visigoth script. Oh, Visigothic script. Visigothic script. All right, fair enough. Yeah, go on.
That's it. It's actually a bronze hand with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fingers.
Yeah.
And it's just basically found on a site in northern Spain.
And it's in the Roman era, basically, that hand.
Remains of a 2,000-year-old settlement discovered.
Oh, nice.
Tetronian walls. That doesn't mean anything to me.
Okay, fair enough. Oh, right. So they just found a hand. Is it part of a statue?
No, it's just a bronze hand, flat metal.
Oh, nice. Weird.
with the inscription across it.
That is very odd.
There you go. Not
But
political, and definitely not in Ireland.
well, it makes a change, doesn't it? It really does. It really does. Right, okay, that's fair enough. Anything else, Henry?
No, that'll do. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Right, Adam, any really nice tidbits for us tonight?
I've got nothing for you, I'm afraid.
Okay, fair enough. Who have we got left? We got Richard.
Nothing from me.
Okay, that's fair enough.
No, I think that's all.
All right then. Okay, I'm just setting one last thing up, and we are going to get going. And we're just going to chuck that over, and we are ready to go. Right. Okay. Now, last week we were obviously starting to look at more about trackways, and I said last week that we'd missed looking at prehistoric trackways more or less completely when we were looking at the Neolithic period. Now that's going to be again just if we're going to sort of reappraise all this tonight, and we've got some other bits and pieces that I chuck in as well, scattered throughout. And one thing that came up last night was the word entertainment. Now, I mentioned the word entertainment to do with one of the sites that we're looking at tonight. And then somebody jumped in and said, you've used the word entertainment in all the lectures I've been with you, right? Looking at prehistory, we've not used the word entertainment once. And I actually said, actually, you're right. We've not actually said that anybody in prehistoric Britain had any kind of entertainment. We've not sort of said that they had any plays or that they had sort of time to sort of entertain or anything. So we might re-justify that tonight and sort of reappraise that statement, reinforce something else there. So that was really interesting. So I think the best thing to do, we're going to get on with Richard, look out for Pat. So you're not allowed to talk about politics, Richard, because you'll upset everyone. Right, so here we go, and there we are. So what we've got all these images here, starting from there, and we go all the way up, we go all the way up, we go all the way up, and we go to that map there. So we've got quite a lot to look at. And there is a couple of Irish sites that we'll be visiting as well, so that's good. What I wanted to do tonight was have a really nice representation of sites all the way across Britain, and I looked into the likes of Scotland, and I didn't really find anything that met my eye, as it were. So we looked at Ireland, and we looked at some other localities, including Cumbria and so on. So let's just crack on, right? And we're going to start off with this. Now, occasionally, when I'm looking through the books that we got in the studio in Barry, I don't know, I turned to a page and it basically said that an ancient trackway along the Clwydian Hills in North Wales. And I thought, that's interesting. It's not specific about what this ancient trackway is, but it made me think again that whenever you're thinking about roads and communication in Britain, you always think about Roman roads. Well, some of the stuff that we're going to look at today are very similar to how some Roman roads were actually built 1,500 years later. And it's on the back as well. When you're looking at sources like this, you're looking on the back of thinking that, oh, it's a trackway, it's a road. Obviously, it was built by the Romans. Nonsense. I used to look at maps of the Vale of Glamorgan, and every road was marked as a Roman road, which is nonsense. So when we think about prehistory and we think about the Neolithic period and the Bronze Age, we've got to be very very tasked with understanding that people would always walk places, and they would naturally walk across boggy landscapes. And there's different ways of walking across boggy landscapes. And some of what we think about boggy landscapes inspired the scenes where Frodo is being led across the boggy landscapes of Mordor. And we think about how you get across those boggy landscapes, and you think about the trackways that we see in this presentation. But just thinking about, people have always wanted to cross landscapes, and we're specifically interested in trackways made of timber and with brushwood and that type of stuff. But trackways have always been with us. They're a way of people moving across the world, the landscape, the beautiful landscape, and the likes of the Clwydian Hills in North Wales. So, a reminder of where we were last week. We were looking at Flag Fen, and I sat down and I thought, right, do I look a little bit more about Flag Fen this week, or do I just look at more of these trackways? And I thought, no, I've got enough to keep me going, because I got to be honest with you, Henry exceeded expectations this week. He said last week, why didn't you have a little look at this? Why didn't you have a little look at that? And I thought, right, all right, then I'll have a little look. And the stuff that I found is brilliant. Thank you for that, Henry. And so we're going to go to Northern Ireland. And where are we going to go to Northern Ireland? Well, I want us to think about, we're going to Northern Ireland, and there's a specific hoard that I want us to look at. And Henry's read about this, and it will not be any surprise that we're going to look at these wonderful objects. Now, when I was doing my research for this, yesterday and so on, oh, I think Pat's just joined us. Is that right? Yeah. Good. I looked at this, and Henry sent me a link. He said the golden boat, and I thought, right, okay, let's look at the golden boat. And then I thought, right, gold. Now, these artifacts that we're going to be looking at now from the Iron Age, right? Okay, Carl, hang on, calm down a minute. I'm not supposed to be doing this now, but we've been talking about gold, right? And we've been talking about where gold comes from, and we've been talking about gold mines in Ireland, and we've been talking about, gold mines in Wales, and we're talking about gold coming from the continent. This is the epitome of all that. And one of the things we said last week was, there's lots of gold around in the Irish Bronze Age, and there's lots of gold around in the Irish Iron Age. So they didn't run out. There's loads of it still. And we're reminded again that when we think about gold in a British context, and for the sake of argument, right, when I say the word British, I mean the big island and the little island of Ireland, right? British, job done. And it's not to upset anybody. It makes it easier for this presentation.
Have you seen how big it is?
What, the boat?
The Isle of Ireland.
I know it's big. Look, what do you want me to call it?
The Isle of Wight?
No! You're really winding me up now, right? To make it easier for this lecture, the big island of Ireland and the lesser big island of mainland Britain will call Britain. Thank you. Now, I was looking at this treasure, and I was intrigued, because I thought I knew this, I knew that, and I didn't know this, right? And you've all seen this, you've all had this in your pocket, because in 1996 they issued a coin, not a coin that had this symbolism on it, a £1 coin that had this symbolism on it, right, to represent a Northern Ireland in our British coinage, right? So we've all seen this. This is part of the Brockter gold hoard, and there it is in Northern Ireland, right? And you've got this little gold bowl. You've got this little. It's actually a little cauldron, actually a little miniature cauldron, and you've got these four other gold objects. Now, the gold boat is fascinating, right? But all these objects are fascinating. And again, this does date from the Iron Age, but the direct link with the Bronze Ages is that there's loads of gold still in the Iron Age. That's my point. That's the question I gave last week. Is there going to be loads of gold in the Iron Age after the Bronze Age? Because you see loads of gold in Ireland. Where does the gold all come from? This gold doesn't come from Ireland. So this was found in 1896 by two farmhands in Limavady in Ireland, which I've probably completely pronounced wrong, a location called Brockter, and by a guy by the name of Tom Nicol and James Morrow on farmland. And this is these treasures are some of the finest Iron Age treasures found in Ireland, particularly in the north. And when we think about the little boat itself, the little golden boat, it's 18 centimeters long. Yeah, this is fascinating jewels from the wonderful Irish Iron Age. Now, this is on display in the National Museum of Ireland. It's not on display in Belfast. And the reason why it's on display in the National Museum of Ireland is when this was put on display in the National Museum of Ireland, that was part of the British Isles, and it's remained there ever since. But there's a replica in the British Museum. There's also a replica in the Ulster Museum in Belfast as well. Now, again, including this is really important when we're thinking about the Bronze Age context, not the Iron Age, and the Iron Age context. And the somewhat puzzling aspect of the hoard is that when you look scientifically at the hoard, the gold actually comes from near the River Rhine, right, in the Rhineland. That's where the gold comes from. And the styles are greatly diverse. There's a great diversification of styles. So you've got this boat that you could basically mildly say it looks a bit like a coracle with a rudder and oars and little mast-like thing and sort of sitting boards and all the rest of it, right? Which we can look at in a little bit more detail. You can think that sort of as a local design, right? And then you're thinking about there's a little miniature golden cauldron. There's some, as we will say, some archaeologists believe that this is a prototype for a big cauldron. A cauldron that's hung on 4 chains. And I'm thinking, this has got to be one of the first times I've ever seen a prototype of something made in gold, when the eventual thing's going to be made in bronze. And I'm thinking, how unusual is that? But you could basically argue that that's sort of a localized design. However, you could then look at the talk as being not distinctively of an Irish design. Right. And again, this is sort of before the birth of Christ, that type of time. But in the Romanized or slowly Romanized world of this side of the Germanicus border, the Rhineland frontier and sort of the Gaulish sort of influence, it's broken. Right. It's broken as well. That's very interesting. But all its stuff ended up in Ireland. Most of it was actually made within the Rhineland landscape, right? Some of it was repaired and it was reheated and sort of hammered and all the rest of it. But this wasn't. This is stylistically from the continent, but it's in Ireland. So the big question you've got to ask is, why is there so much bloody gold in Ireland, right? And it's not pixies, leprechauns, and things that go bump in the night. So again, this was a design on the £1 coin, and it's been defined both this Brockter collar or a Brockter chalk, as we call it. These are to be found on stamp designs along with the little miniature boat as well. You can see those on stamp designs, and you can see the detail there. Doesn't that look absolutely fine?
It's lovely.
It looks
It's very fine.
beautiful. It looks beautiful, absolutely beautiful, right? And but this is actually not of an Irish design. It's of a design that might be Irish, but then again, it's come from the continent. So it's trying to get to grips with the context outside the context, right? It's like we find all these things together, and we're thinking, right, they've all got the same story, but they don't have the same story because all these artifacts have different stories. And that's something else as well. But they have different stories coming from somewhere else. And you're thinking they couldn't have accidentally ended up in Ireland, could they? You know? And it was discovered by complete accident on a winter day in 1896, February 1896. And it was found not by metal detecting in 1896, because they didn't have those things back then. They don't have those things until they were using metal detectors in on German minefields at the end of the Second World War. But this was found due to normal everyday ploughing, and there's probably more in the soil. And there's another point that I digress and go off on to straight away. When people turn around to say, "Oh, has everything that's buried in the soil ever been found, or will it ever be found?" The answer is no, no, and no. Right? There will be things like this in the ground being found in 1,000 years' time, in 2,000 years' time, in 3,000 years' time, in 4,000 years' time, or when they're finding Shergar. Right? These things will still be found. And this was found 14 inches below the surface. So basically just over the length of a normal standard ruler, 36 centimeters deep. And they were found in close approximation to each other. Now, I want to spit this out straight away. When we find these in close approximation with each other, it doesn't necessarily mean that they were all buried at the same time, right? And I used this example last night. I said in the garden here, we've got a terracotta jar, and any copper coins I've got, I flicker into the terracotta jar in the garden and just leave it, right? I actually don't use money at all now. I can't remember the last time I actually physically used money, right, was about 6 months ago, right? So copper coins we chuck in a jar in the garden, right? Somebody in the future generation will find it. But all those coins are put in the jar over different time periods. They're not all buried at the same time. That is the point. So when you think about a hoard, because it's found together, it doesn't necessarily mean to say that it's all buried together. And these objects all seem relatively different. There are some distinctive characteristics. For example, these like torque objects for around the neck, for example, these could easily hark back to 3,000 years ago rather than 2,000 years ago, right? With the metal working from one piece of gold, it's stretched, hammered, stretched, turned, stretched, hammered, turned, and all that type of stuff, right? So very different. And we've got these sort of what we've got then. Hang on, if we look, we've got these sort of they're like chains, like normal everyday chains, right? Sorry, the images are not brilliant. And interestingly enough, these were first sold in 1896. Wait for it, right? For £600 in 1896. It was sold to the British Museum for £600. I have no idea, right? So what it is, these items were taken to the farmhouse, right? And they were sold to the British Museum. And I'm thinking £600 back then. Well, when you think about it, the first £1 million deal on the planet was made in Cardiff at the coal exchange around this time, right? Now, today we're making £1 trillion deals on the planet, right? So I know it's not anywhere close to a million. The point is that the value in gold itself and selling it to the British Museum was actually absolutely extraordinary, right? And when we think about there you go, that lovely little mast there, it sticks out. Lovely, love the mast. And what you've got the complete fittings, oars. You've got the necklaces there. You've got the bowl and torque, right? And the torque itself is actually hollow. It's hollow. Interesting, hollow. It is said that, moreover, the boat had been so badly damaged by the plough that it took a goldsmith. It was taken to a goldsmith later to work out its structure, and it was like reconstructed and fine. Right, as you know, gold is really malleable. It was put together. Thinking that all the ores were there, I don't know these. Obviously I'll never meet these guys who found it because they're long gone. But you're thinking that they managed to, they managed to get all the little ores and stuff. It was great. It's great, wonderful that it was going to originally be taken to a jeweler in Derry and melted down, but so pleased it wasn't. So again, making the statement, the metallurgical signatures for this gold takes it to the Roman Rhineland, and it all reached Ireland. Now, perhaps after a period in Britain, some of the pieces may have been sort of mucked around with, remade, but the necklaces are as they were, right? No changes with them. Some of the objects are being mucked around with and altered, but the gold is actually Rhineland gold, and this is, you can see some even more fascinating images than this on the internet. So anyway, let's go back to a little bit of a boat, and when we think about this boat, and we the boat itself, as we've mentioned, is 18 centimeters in length, and it's of old school, just over 7 inches long. Width is 3 inches, 7.6 centimeters, and the gold in this weighs 85 grams, which is 3 ounces. Now, you know, I know I'm not exactly sure of the gold value today.
Password for Carl Langford at googlemail.com. Signing in.
Right,
Your
okay.
PIN or password couldn't be verified.
Sorry about that,
Try again.
guys.
Hit Control Shift Space to switch keyboard
We've got a
layout.
thing going on
Your
here.
PIN or password couldn't be verified.
Hang on.
Try signing in.
Right, good. Something just happened with the computer there. So what I was saying, I've got no idea, you know, how much 3 ounces of gold is, but it's 85 grams. And when you think about that, it's got little benches. It's got 2 rows of 9 oars, a paddle rudder for steering, and it's describing that it's got a yard arm as well. Is a spear associated with it. 3 forks, whatever they are, tools for grappling, obviously grappling hooks and all the rest of it, and you've got the mast itself. And when we think about this, I read this yesterday, and it said the words. The boat suggests that this was associated with some kind of sea god in Irish mythology, called the Manan Mac Lir. But I'm thinking, if this is associated with some kind of sea god, right, and it comes from Rhineland and it goes to Ireland, how is that the same god? And you're seeing discrepancies of what this is all about, and trying to fit things to it. I don't see this as one deposit. I see this as somebody going in there, depositing these things over a period of time. Now, you could be mistaken for thinking that this is the most important of all the treasures. I think all of these items are treasures in themselves. So we think about this, and we think about this is a long process to create this. There's incised decorations, there's relief decorations on this, and interestingly enough, that is where that slotted into each other, it connected into each other. So the torque itself is 19 centimeters in diameter, right? And I'm just going to get my ruler a minute, and I'm just going to put that up against my neck. So it's 17 centimeters in diameter. So yeah, that would fit. No, 19 centimeters in diameter. So that would fit around my neck. So that would fit around my neck. So I do believe that that's 19 centimeters from the outside, the outside diameters of this. And it's described that that is the connection terminal at the bottom. It's describing it as a mortise and tenon fastening, which I think is quite interesting. And the other interesting thing is that would mean that this had some kind of flexibility, right? It has clearly been cut. So, and the flexibility comes about by the fact that this is actually a hollow tube, right? And the diameter of the hollow tube is just over an inch. So if you get a ruler and you think, right, okay, there we go, right? It's saying it's 2.86 centimeters, just over 1 inch in diameter, the thickness of the tube there. And so I'm thinking that this is a really interesting object, and we've got nothing that compares to this. There's no comparison to this on the continent, but we know about you know, and there's nothing like this in regards to Ireland. The design itself is very similar to what we refer to as the Snettisham Torque and the Snettisham Hoard found in southern England. So that's a similarity, but not in Ireland or in a continental context. So the design on this torque can be studied, and we're thinking about we're thinking about the gold, and you know there's lots of planar torques in this. This is highly elaborate, massively highly elaborate. So the other thing we're gonna talk about, and we will talk about the chain necklaces as well. But I would like to go to the little bowl, and unfortunately, I do regret not having a better image of the bowl, because what you can see four little things which would have been used as a miniature. You can see that it's a miniature design. It's unusually that it's a gold bowl, a model of a cauldron. Now, I've never come across anything like this before, where it says this is a miniature of what the cauldron is going to look like. And I'm thinking, what that says to me is one thing, that the gold isn't as valuable as bronze at this stage. Because if you're making a sample of something out of gold, right, then the end result is obviously going to be bronze, and therefore the bronze object is going to be more valuable. This is what it says to me. And then somebody said last night, well, it might be because it's easier to shape gold. But then again, why don't you just use something else, right? You can use tin. You can use a very soft copper. You know, you don't need to use gold as an example, but they did. And I think that's absolutely fascinating that we see that. And I've not come across anything like that. Usually when you see samples, it's made of clay, or it's made of I don't know, it's made of wood or anything else, but it's certainly not made of gold. So obviously the larger cauldron, this would have hung, if I can hang this in now, it would have hung on 4 chains like that, right? And it would have held from a spit. But that would have been the full design, right? This is just a miniature design itself. So very lucky to see this. And we you know, this is quite small. You know, it's 3.5 inches in diameter. It's 2 inches in depth, and it weighs 1 ounce. So we know about hanging bowls across Europe, but we don't know them of making a prototype like this. I think this is absolutely fascinating. It's such a simple object, but it's absolutely fascinating. And again, a disappointment is that I should have done a little bit more soul searching for images. So what you've got these little chains here. You've got these little chains, particularly that one there, and that one there, right? So these chain necklaces, again, chain necklaces. So I described these earlier on as being like pulling pulling the what pulling a bar of gold. But this is more complex than that. This is a chain necklace, right? And it's basically a single chain, a very complex construction. And this chain making technique, and there's clasps on the end, it clasps together like like the type of chain that you may wear around your neck with a ring in it, or pendant or something. So that's what we've got. So these designs are typically from the Roman world, and that object in front is a you can't see it, but again, sorry I didn't get the images up. That thing in front of us is what's known as a triple chain necklace. Again, gold. So the skill to be able to produce this blows your mind, right? And you know, there are examples like this in southern England. There's examples like this in Scotland, right? But naturally, this is found associated with this in Ireland. Now, there's a big story about, you know, where it ended up and how it moved around, and you know, there's a lot more that can be said about this. People have indicated that is it associated with the burial, is it some kind of offering, and so on. We will never know. So that's that. So what we're going to do now, we're going to go on to item number 2. Now, I've got to take a drink because I'm getting very dry now. No, this is not prehistoric. This is not Bronze Age. But this is the article of the week. Now, for me, I got very excited about this. And why? You may have heard me writing in Illicit Pillar occasionally with the following sentence. I would love to find an early monastery that predates a Norman monastery, right? I would actually like to find the real evidence, because even though they've done work recently at Langford Major, they've not really found real evidence of pre-Norman monasteries in Wales. And I was talking to a very learned clergyman who buys eggs off me, actually. And I said to him about a year ago, I said, look, Bill, not our Bill, another Bill, Anne. Right, I said, look, Bill, you've been to you know, you've been to theological college and so on. How do you answer the following question? I said, well, were there any pre-Norman monasteries in Wales? And he said, it's unlikely. And he gave the answer, because religion in Wales was very different than Norman religion, Norman Christianity, right? It was pre-Norman Christianity. It was pre the Church of Rome's Christianity. It was Roman Christianity. The difference is with that is Roman Christianity is Christianity that's been brought here by the Roman world. And the other Christianity is Rome's Christianity, the Vatican and all the rest of it. Those are the two differences. So, and he basically said that this Christianity was based on cellular Christianity before the Normans. Basically, there would be a church, there would be a localized Christianity with their own ways and their own little fads. They would have little cellular orders, and they would have monks. And think about Holy Island, think about Caldy, think about the likes of what was happening at Llandaff and all the rest of it. But we do believe we've actually found one of these early monasteries at a place known as Strata, Florida, which is in mid Wales. Somebody's asking online. This is Kate asking, is this Lampeter Bill? Yes, it is, Kate, that I'm describing. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever been to Strata, Florida, right? But it's a wonderful Cistercian site. But the origins are far more important than that. So archaeologists have unearthed what could be an early monastery at the site of a Cistercian abbey in mid Wales. It's not far away from me. It's just gone past Tregaron. Radiocarbon dating suggests that there may have been a pre-Cistercian monastery at Strata, Florida. And how do we know? Radiocarbon dates. They've been working at this site within the Cambrian Mountains near the village of Pont Rhe Fen Digide, which is near Devil's Bridge and Tregaron. And the archaeological excavations on the site began in 2004 and will be continuing this summer at Strata Florida Trust's Archaeological Field School, which runs for a month, 17th of June to the 14th of July. And may I remind you as well that the last excavations taking place at the Nessa Brodga will be taking place this year. And if anyone wants to get to the Nessa Brodga excavations to see the Neolithic work, get out there and see it. And I'll even pay you to take photographs for us, right? I'll even pay for your accommodation if someone wants to go to Orkney and look at the excavations there. And I will do that. That's a defo. But I'm not paying for your train fare and your bus fare and whatever, right? Anyway, cracking on back to this excavation of Strata, Florida. So over the past 5 years, within that 2004 to now period, within the past 5 years, the Archaeological Field School have been excavating within an area of Mynachlog Farm, Fawr Farm. Now, Mynachlog means Mynach, or Mynachli means monastery. Mynach means monastery. So this area here, they're actually doing up the buildings as part of the field school, and they're working in the yard there, right? They're refurbishing them as part of the trust, and they're excavating here. And what they're finding here in front of us is part of a major aqueduct, not an aqueduct, a water conduit system, culverts and all the rest of it, medieval buildings. But the remains of one stone building underneath this, however, appear to be earlier than the rest. Now, this is great. This is so great, and it says that something I've been banding on about is archaeological fact rather than archaeological in my head. Let's try and find the Holy Grail, and we don't find it, folks. Right? So we're actually finding it, which is unbelievable. So the specialists have come on to look at radiocarbon, to get radiocarbon samples. The first samples that they're getting are from these buildings, which date the earliest phase, the terminus postquem date around 1166 AD, right? But underneath that, they get a date. The terminus postquem date, the date, the next radiocarbon date, because there's 3, is 1028 AD. Well before those damnable, bloody, horrible-faced Normans get to Wales, right? And they get an earlier date as well, 1017, right? The terminus postquem date, the earliest date that they get from radiocarbon date is 1017. So this makes it a building associated, hopefully, with one of the earliest monasteries that we know of to date in the whole province of Wales. So the last 2 dates that we get are massively important. They predate the Cistercian Abbey. The Cistercian Abbey, they didn't establish the Cistercian Abbey year until 1184, right? They seem to suggest that the building is pre-Cistercian in date. They are pre-Cistercian in date. So one of the main focuses of the upcoming 2024 excavations will be the further examination of the building by attempting to find its original flaws and any features associated with its earlier use and function. These will offer a glimpse into the history of this site before the Cistercians arrived. So on the basis of certain aspects of its siting and related features, there has long been speculation that there was a pre-Cistercian, pre-Norman monastery here. Strata, Florida is very likely to be on top of whatever was there, this earlier building. Could these recent discoveries and this year's work prove the evidence, which will be groundbreaking? And you know what? Look out for it when that news is broken, say in August, right? That they have found that. Be the first to send it over to me, right? And I'll give you a big sloppy kiss, Goff or Henry, right? Be the first to send it over to me because I want to read that and I'm going to digest it and I'm going to bring it to you. And I might be able to even get you some images of the excavation as well. Loving it. Okay, where are we going to go next? There's Strata Florida. We've just done that. And this is to do with the question that I mentioned last week or the week before. One of our gang on a Tuesday, they said to me, have you heard about in the Bronze Age, there was a distinction between them and us. So us is free people, them is people who are not exactly free, right? And we find whole buildings that were for us and them, right, in the Danish context. So I thought I'd put this in here anyway to give you something else. So the article proposes that unfree labour was an integral part of Bronze Age society. If we stop there a minute and say what unfree labour is. In the medieval period, all of us, other than Henry, because he would have been the lord of the manor, all of us would have been serfs. We belonged to Henry, right? We weren't classed as slaves. We could go anywhere within we could go anywhere within the manor, right? Within the 700-acre manor, but you could never leave that manor, right? You had to pay taxes. You had to owe your allegiance to the lord of the manor. And if the lord of the manor says, "Look, Anne, I want you to go off and fight for me," you have to do it. Otherwise, your family would be turfed off the land. So that's serfdom, but it's slavedom as well. The presence of the unfree, the thralls, or even slaves, in prehistoric society has rarely been discussed and never in the light of archaeological evidence. This is one thing that I like to see inference in archaeology, thinking about Tim Ingold, thinking about the use of space and all the rest of it, which is what my specialism is in. And you think, well, you think actually we can detect these things. And the article goes on. The article is based on empirical material evidence from 333 fully excavated house remains from 120 sites in the Viborg area in northwest Jutland in Denmark, based on the reconstructed size of these long houses. And this is Bronze Age. The location of fireplaces, entrances, and the subdivision of space. It is suggested that farmsteads in general had two often clearly separated habitable units in the early Bronze Age. Right, okay. So we're talking about 4,000 years ago. A longhouse was usually subdivided. Hang on a minute. Was subdivided, hang on a minute, got a bit funny there, was subdivided into two parts, and during the late Bronze Age, this subdivision manifested in the construction of two longhouses. So a longhouse for the family to live in, Henry and his mob, and then the rest of us would live in the other longhouse, otherwise known as the granny flat. After a thorough analysis of the archaeological record, it is suggested that the owner of the land had occupied one habitable unit, while the other was reserved for the unfree. So in other words, you were tied to the lord of the manor, or in a Bronze Age sense, the person who more or less owned you, right? So I want to chuck that in there, right? Oh, yes. Now, I asked them all last night, and there's definitely two people interested, right? I thought I'd chuck this in as a little bit of a breaker. I said to them all last night, on April the 1st, which is a Monday at 7 o'clock, I will be doing a lecture on the archaeology of buttons. And the reason why I'm doing a lecture on the archaeology of buttons is a little fundraiser for our studio in Barry. So if any of you are interested in the archaeology of buttons, and it's naturally April Fool's Day, so it'll be a nice little weird lecture with a lot of interesting buttons and a lot of stuff to go into. Be £6. So if anyone's interested, let me know, and you can sign up for the class. It'll be a 1-day class. Now, legendary, wonderful friend who is Henry. Now, I looked at this and I become fascinated again, and I thought that this would be something that we could get our teeth into. But then I moved on to this one, right, which is the Corley trackway. And the main bog trackway is absolutely fascinating. And the reason why it's fascinating is there's a little bit of politics involved in this one, which we're going to talk about now. I've lost my reception on my notes a second. And if I can give you some of the background, this wonderful trackway was originally investigated in 2004, and what happened is that in 2015 they realized that at least 75% of it has been destroyed by people working on peat within this landscape, right? So the destruction of a 3,000-year-old roadway in County West Meath, and I thought this was absolutely disastrous. But the Corlea one, they've got an example with the Corlea one that it's fairly intact, and the dimensions are very, very similar to this one, right? But unfortunately, a large chunk of this has been damaged, and what you can clearly see is there's oaken planks being placed across a former peat bog, right? And I thought this was absolutely fascinating because what happened when we looked at the trackways, for example, the Sweet Track, and we looked at other trackways. There are different ways of actually constructing these. So I'm going to discuss some of the notes in front of me because I think it's quite valid, a validation of the fact that we've got to try and preserve these things because they are important. Something that's 3,000 years old. There's a reconstruction of it. So while Irish heritage is being celebrated and promoted this week now, the destruction of a major archaeological monument, this major timber-built road of European significance at County Westmeath, is continuing, right? And back in 2004, 2005, when this was originally discovered. Right, when it was originally discovered, they said, look, we need to protect this, but it was never given any protection. And the landowner continued to work around it and to destroy it. And the National Monument Service subsequently instigated the excavation of a few meters of the 657-meter long roadway, which established that the monument was a plank built trackway, hence roadway, 3,000 years ago. Not just a mere trackway, but a roadway. So the planks themselves, you can get an idea of the scale. They only excavated bits of it, and they excavated bits of it. They covered it back over, and they said, oh, this will be here in a few years' time, and it was gone. And so lots of it was never recorded. So they believe it was a length of 675 meters. And we've got radiocarbon dates for this date. Not dendrochronology, strange enough, but radiocarbon dates going possibly as far back as 3,200 years ago. So it's quite an interesting Bronze Age trackway. And this predates the Corlea bog roadway by 1,000 years. So this is a very old roadway indeed. And you could think that the way this is being constructed tells us that across the bog, these people meant business with some of these between 4.5 and 6 meters in width. So these people actually meant real business. And it's a shame that it wasn't all preserved. And actually, they say that even in the 10 years between 2005 and 2015, 75% of it had been destroyed. simply because nobody said to the developer or the peat bog cutter to leave it there and to keep it and protect it, which I feel is sort of complete travesty. You know, you can't blame the peat diggers for destroying it because they weren't told to keep it or not, right? So, and it wasn't protected, which is a bit of a shame. So there's the locality. So the next one we're going to go on to a bit more clear of these, right? And we're going to go on to the wonderful Corlia example of a trackway. But what I'm thinking of doing, we've I thinking that we might have a little bit of a break now. And the reason why we're going to have a break is if I leave some of the earlier subject matter, you might forget to ask questions on it. So we're going to do that now, and we're going to go for a short break, and then we'll probably be back after 5 minutes. So we'll find out if there's any questions. So there we go. We go there, and bingo questions, and there is Patricia DeVille. Right. Good of you to join us. We were supposed to be having Dell tonight. Peter gave his apologies. An one-legged donkey hasn't turned up. Talking about one-legged donkeys, and
Oh, donkeys.
Oh,
Yes. They're killing all the donkeys in Africa
no,
to make
okay.
Chinese medicine.
I didn't expect that, Anne, but that's not what he mentioned. Right, Anne, you can I feel very sorry for the donkeys in Africa, right? And hopefully some will end up in the three-legged donkey sanctuary that I know about, and I pay a donation every month in Spain. But other than that, Anne, anything you want to ask?
No, I've seen a boat before. It's beautiful, and it's been used in like some artistic representation, to connect it to the refugees. You know, I've seen a poster with it full of people that
That's very political, Anne, and
yeah.
we can't talk about refugees,
Oh
unfortunately.
well, no,
Right.
yes, I like trackways.
Good.
Sorry, it's in County Westmeath though, because that's where that's my county.
Okay, that's good, Anne. That's good. Right. Who's next? Goff, anything you want to say before we have a little break?
I was really enjoying. I was just sort of fascinated, really, that gold go all the way from the Rhineland to Ireland. It's just amazing, isn't it?
And yeah, it is outstanding. And sorry to interrupt there. Have you got anything else to say? Because I'll chuck my bit in. No. Well, the thing is, I think that all this gold ending up in Ireland, it's like really odd. You know, we think about gold as we think about Ireland as the Emerald Isle. We think about leprechauns and pots of gold and all the rest of it. But this isn't the point. Is this is not Irish gold, right? But there's a lot of gold in Ireland from all over the place, and the point is, Goff, that I mentioned last week, I think, that we've got gold mines in Wales, in the west down here. We've got gold mines in North Wales, but we don't find a lot of gold in Wales at all. It's odd. It's very, very odd. We've got gold mines in Cornwall. We don't find much gold in Cornwall. We find, but where all the gold is going to, it's going to the east coast. In Norfolk, they found literally thousands of gold talks in Norfolk. Right? We don't find many of these in Wales at all. And in Ireland, look at the amount of gold they're finding, boatloads of them, right? But it's not all from Ireland, Goff. You're right. It's fascinating, outstanding.
Yeah, you see, you got this Irish folklore thing, the pot of gold. It's amazing. Yeah, thank you.
But it's not a pot. But the thing is, it's not a pot of Irish gold. They're selling it, Yeah. Right. Okay. So we done Anne and Goff. Adam.
Just on the back of what you were just saying about talks, Carl, where do we find the most of them in Britain?
Talks, we find them in just north of Colchester in East Anglia. That's where we're finding them all, right?
Interesting.
The thing is, more talks have been found in that little bit that sticks out, Suffolk, at Norfolk, and sort of all that East Anglia area. More have been found in that thing that sticks out than in the whole of the two islands.
That's really interesting.
But there's no gold. There's no gold in East Anglia.
Right.
We
Mines, I mean.
there's no gold at all in East Anglia. But the thing is, I used to have this when we originally started our classes in Arnside, actually in Cumbria, in 2012. I remember something cropped up, and I remember asking everybody the question, why are there so many gold objects being found in East Anglia, right? There's got to be gold mines in East Anglia for gold to be there, right? And it turns out there's no gold mines in East Anglia. There's no gold being found in East Anglia, but gold ends up. The first gold coins in a British context, just before the birth of Christ, is East Anglia, right? But we don't find gold coins being produced in Wales. It's odd, right? The Romans are mining gold, right, in Wales after they invade, right? But we don't find much of it. I don't get it. And actually, I'm making a link between East Anglia and Ireland, right? A weird link that there's not a lot of gold being mined in Ireland. There's a little bit, right? But gold seems to gradiate there, and why, I don't know. Right. We'll ask Henry that question in a minute. He'll come up with a daft answer, but we'll ask Pat. Anything from you, Pat?
No, very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Pat's gold.
I may leave
Pat's
at 9:30 though.
You'll leave at 9:30. We won't be good.
Oh, yeah, 9:30. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll probably be finishing at 9:30 anyway. Richard.
No, really interesting.
Good.
Can't really
Good.
think why it tends to be in different areas, the gold.
Exactly.
Possibly fashion. Might be more fashionable.
Maybe they like gold in those areas.
Or possibly it's traded for other items.
But
about it.
So it's not about it, because somebody mentioned something last night. They said, well, it was a very wise question. This guy doesn't say a lot in my Tuesday evening class. Adam knows who I'm talking about, and he said, look, Carl, with all the amount of gold that we find in Ireland, and all the other artifacts, does that mean to say that the population figures in Ireland were much greater than we ever perceived? And actually, that may be factual, because when we look at East Anglia, there are more people living in East Anglia in the Iron Age than probably any area of the whole of Britain, right? There's a lot of people over that neck of the woods, right? And they happen to have a lot of gold. So if you take that model and take it a little bit earlier into the Bronze Age, lots of people in Ireland, lots more gold. Idea. Right. Henry.
Hello.
Go on.
Well, I just think, does it underline that the intercontinental trade routes were probably more in use than anyone's really taken on board?
And actually via Ireland more than anything. But then again, you've got Biscay, you've got the Irish Channel. It's not exactly an easy place to get to, but that is based on modern currents.
Rivers.
Yeah. The point is when you think about the Rhineland, right? You get material on boats from the Rhineland out into the North Sea, out into the English Channel, up to Cornwall, up into past the Bristol Channel into the Irish Sea. But we always think about what it's like today. Water may have acted differently back then, and it may have been easier to get to Ireland than it was to get to Scotland from the Low Countries. Don't know.
Well, also to get into the centre of Ireland, if you go up the Shannon estuary, you basically
Mhm.
go up through into the lakes, up into Lough Derg, and follow the Shannon all the way up, effectively up nearly to Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
And you've got to obviously access that from the. I've got my geography right. The west coast, yeah.
Yeah, from the west coast.
Exactly, but that's even weirder. So that's even weirder. Anything else, Henry? Because we're going to take a 5-minute break.
No, that's excellent. Thank you very much.
Right, 5-minute break, folks. And we're not going to be any more than that. So Anne, put your kettle on quickly because we're not going to be long.
I put it
Pat
on.
needs to. Pat, don't forget, Pat needs to go at 9:30. So don't keep her.
Mm-mm.
Well, I forgot, Carl. I sent you some links.
Right, you sent them via email or what?
Yeah, email.
Okay, right. Okay, then I gotta go and get something to drink. Thank you for that, Henry.
Okay.
Hi, Pat.
No, I'm okay.
Hello.
You okay?
Yeah, everything all right?
Yeah, just tired and slow and can't get things done and
No, I know.
forgetful, can't remember what day it is.
Well, let's hope that we get some settled weather and some,
Yeah,
spring when the spring comes,
yes,
we'll be feeling better, get
yes,
more energy.
yes, hopefully. Yes. You
What's
getting
this?
lots done? Are you organized and tidy?
Organized and tidy.
Yeah.
No. Oh, the only thing we did get rid of got rid of our mattress today.
You got a new one?
Old mattress and an old door.
Yeah. You got a nice
We're
new one?
we're trying to clear the garage because it's just like
Jammed.
put
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, I know ours is too. Everything is that way. Oh
And
God. Yeah.
we had mice living in the garage, so we
Oh
had to do
no.
something. Yeah, well, they were mice because we found a few dead ones.
Oh dear. We had a shed as the back of the house. You just open the door and it's just a shed
Yeah,
attached to the house,
yeah,
And there it was wood and there was a little, shape, you know, like a little
yeah.
arched
They
doorway,
chew.
and it chewed a little doorway in there, and
Yeah,
it's
they
living quite
chew. They
happily
do.
in our
Yeah,
shed. We used to throw the trash bags in there, sort of, So we keep them inside in the garage where they can't get to them because they can just chew a hole through the bottom, and
I know. I
crawl in. Yeah.
know.
And I think my son put a new piece of wood and they cut through that too.
Apparently, it's to keep their teeth, keep their
Sharp. Huh?
teeth sharp or
Oh
short,
God.
short,
Yes.
because
Oh,
like,
but I guess sometimes I didn't see it, but there was a rat that walked in
yeah,
the back of our house once. Oh God. And we had
yeah,
moles
they
one
get
time.
everywhere, don't they? Well, I
Yeah.
haven't seen one round here, but I did see one that ran across the road.
Oh,
When I was driving, I saw
yeah.
a rat run across the road. So
Oh,
yeah, well, it could have been a field one, There's
yeah.
lots of fields around.
They say you're never far from a rat.
No.
We've got a river, so
Oh yeah. Oh, exactly. Yeah.
probably
Oh, we
attracted
used to
them.
have a river near us, and it was, yeah, we did have rats come up.
So I don't know, but
Yeah. Well, in
I'd
those
like to get rid
days,
of stuff,
yeah.
and I
Oh,
got to
well.
sort things out. Rich
But
moved
but
from.
it's just there's never any time, is there, to sort things
No, no,
out?
I know.
We haven't even looked in the attic for years, so
I know. We've
yeah.
been in the same house for 40 years.
Yeah. We yeah, we have.
Have
We're in
you?
the same house for
Yeah,
40 years, yeah.
83 we moved in. Yeah,
Mari was 40 this year,
yeah,
and we moved in, oh, it was 81 we moved in,
yeah.
so it's more than 40 years.
Yes, yeah, I'll say.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, scary.
Oh,
I can't believe that. I never thought I'd settle in one place for 40 years,
I
ever.
thought about it.
After being at home, I hated it, being stuck in a place.
Yeah. Oh dear. I can
I
see this
do, I
room.
do, move about quite a bit.
Yeah, I moved around quite a bit before that. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
4, 7 years, something like
Oh,
that.
you did, yeah. You moved a lot, didn't you?
Yeah, well, yeah, but not after I arrived here. I haven't moved at all.
Yeah, that's it,
Right,
isn't
let's
it?
We didn't downsize, we upsized, and put a big room, a library above a new garage attached to the house, so
Yeah, yeah.
oh dear.
Oh, it's a lovely house you've got,
Yeah. Yeah, we like it.
especially with the flags,
Yeah, the flags, yes, yes.
especially with the flags hanging out the window.
on that note, and I didn't think people like Confederate flags flying outside houses, but
No.
Pat's different.
Oh, I
Right,
didn't have any of those.
right. So I just had to put some more wood on the fire because it was temperature had dropped. So I've just done that. So what I get some damp wood. I put it on top. I put some wood in there. Then it dries out the wood on top and it goes in again. So that's good. Um, right. Anyway, let's crack on. We're gonna go do part two. And we've got 5 other people on YouTube, so that's good. So we're gonna crack on to sharing. Sharing's caring, right? By the way, I'll warn you all in advance. As soon as the Ghostbusters film's out, and me and Goff have watched it, we'll be chatting about that for 5 minutes in these classes. So there we go. Right, we're back to Ireland again, and if we there we are. There it is, smack bang there. And we're going to think about they've reconstructed bits of it, and they've got a museum for it as well, and that's how they've planked it in. So let's get there. Let's think about this, and let's sort of think about the reconstruction again across this landscape, which they did in 2009. So let's get onto my notes, and we will be onto it. Hang on a minute. We're onto it now. Hang on a minute. There. Hang on a minute. Was there a second ago. And I'm glad you're liking these trackways because it's something that I can't believe that I missed out when we were doing the Neolithic stuff. But they run obviously from the Neolithic period into the likes of the Bronze Age and the Iron Age and so on. So I'm just trying to get my notes up on you in a minute, and if not, I will try something out. Got it. So this itself is in County Longford, not Langford, Longford in Ireland, as we've already seen. And this is an Iron Age trackway, not Bronze Age. But the point is that we know they produced things like this in the Bronze Age as well in mainland Britain. It was people initially, when they found this, they actually thought that this was actually constructed by the Vikings, right? So if we go, they actually thought this was a Viking roadway, right? But it turned out that we've got a precise dating for when this was constructed. In fact, we know they started constructing it on the 1st of December in the year 148 BC. And when I say that, you might think, oh, Karl's off his head. But what we know that the planks were felled in late 148 BC and were being laid all the way through into 147 BC. So when I say some of these were laid down on the 1st of December in the year 148 BC, I am not wrong.
Gosh.
Amazing. And the length of this is, they know that this one stretch itself goes a whopping 1 kilometer. And its width is on average 10 foot wide, 3.2 meters wide, and it's all made of oak. Stop a minute. It's all made of oak. That means that there was a lot of oak still around in the Iron Age. It wasn't all felled in the Bronze Age at all. So by looking, when you look at later archaeological evidence, it helps us understand earlier archaeological evidence. So if there's something around, so say for example, we find bears wandering around today in Scotland, it means that the bears did not become extinct in the 1600s. Because they couldn't have become extinct because they're still around. So sometimes it's good to look at later evidence to understand the earlier evidence and to see if the earlier evidence in any way become extinct at any point. So we've got to think about this, and I think this is intriguing. And obviously, looking at Iron Age stuff and trying to link it in with Bronze Age stuff is very much linked. So the trackway is situated in an area like our previous site is situated in an area where they're doing industrial scale mechanized peat harvesting. I didn't know this, but I didn't know you could power stations on peat, but apparently they do in Ireland.
Yes, they do.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I
didn't until I was told.
But I've told you now. So basically, it's the landscape today. If you want to think that they've made a reconstruction across it, there it is. So the landscape itself, you know, what we've got is that we can understand the interpreting the landscape back in the day was a boggy landscape. It had quicksand. Remember Tarzan and the apes, and the bloke ends up in the quicksand, and Tarzan and the apes, he rescues the woman. Yeah, the quicksand. Ponds. And back in the day, because of pollen that we found in the evidence, there were dense woodlands of birch, willow, hazel, and alder, and ash. And as we know, this is made of oak. Yeah. Now, initially, you know, it comes to its fame in the 2000s, but the first timbers were actually found in 1984, and they had no idea that it was Iron Age. They thought it was Bronze Age, and others thought it was to do with the Vikings laying it. And maybe actually, when you think about the Vikings laying something like this, go to York and think about how they use timber in York, and that wouldn't be too far away from the truth. But we now know that this dates to the year 148 BC. Right? Amazing that we've got that detail. So whenever I take the mickey and so say something happened on the 14th of August in the year 34 BC at 5:15, don't always think I'm joking, because this is factual. So they found some of this in 1984. They started really working on it in 1991, and they actually studied the landscape as a whole. And guess what? They found 5 of these, no, 59 of these within that landscape. They located 59 of these over an area of 125 hectares. 59. They're known as tuchers. Toghers, tuchers. And we've also got in, there's also another, there's also the Derry Ogill bog that they found 76 of these, amazingly enough. So the majority of the tuggers are actually not like this at all. They're actually, if we get off the screen, they look like this. Those are what the majority of tuggers in this landscape look like in County Langford. But these ones are actually of the boards. Now, they very interesting this, and you're thinking that the split timbers and the split planks to create this, they referred to as the corduroy roads, and these would be perfectly suitable for wheeled traffic. So obviously the other ones that we mentioned, the ones that are brushwood and hurdles, they would be okay to walk along sort of barefooted or with shoes that are suitable. But these are actually, the planks are roughly 3.5 meters in length. Obviously, if I said width, that's not right. So length, the length of the path. And interestingly enough, you'll never guess that this one length, they've worked out that this was a length of 300 large oak trees that are split and used in this way. So 300 large oak trees were used to create this. So in other words, if you're thinking about Ireland lacking trees in the Bronze Age and in the Iron Age, we're completely bloody wrong. Right? Again, I like to be wrong. When you get these assumptions, you've got to challenge them. You've got to look at later evidence. And can we just stop there? We're just going to stop, right? And if Peter was you, he'd go, oh, here we go. He's mentioning the Romans again. Well, actually, we've got evidence that in the Roman world in Britain, to get across boggy landscapes, the Romans built their roads exactly like this. But these had already existed in some context 1,000 years earlier. So where are the Romans getting their ideas from? They're not inventing them themselves, are they? They're not original. They're looking at the landscape and talking to local people. How can we cross this landscape? Well, just do this. And actually, the other thing as well is there are examples across Britain when they were laying some of the original not roadways, train tracks, right? They did this as well. So what they would do, they would build up surfaces of bracken and wattles and hurdles, and then they would have gravels and all the rest of it. And directly on top of this, they would have planks, and then on top of that, they'd have rails. So you can imagine trains originally in the 1840s would actually use these type of routeways, right? Obviously created in the 1840s based on earlier technology, because if it worked in earlier years, that's what you do. Some of these rails are actually some of them can actually be quite wide, right? Some of them can be over a meter in width, right? So the length 3.5, some can be over a meter in width. So we got the dendrochronology evidence, and it said that as I've said, over 300 large oaks were used to create this, and it said that that's the equivalent of a whopping 1,000 wagon loads of timber, right? And obviously what they've got is a similar number of pegs, which were made of birch. So this itself, there's something else really interesting about this, right? And what is interesting about it, so what we're going to do, we're going to go to the reconstructed version. And this is in a museum. You can see this. It's great. I love it. I love it. I love it when the Irish do. The Irish and the Scots are the best at presenting their history and archaeology, followed by England, and followed a distant sort of thing by that sort of backwater Wales. This itself, the reconstruction, right? You could actually be at Cosmeston Lakes, right? But you're not. You're in Collier Trackway in Ireland, right? Call it a roadway. Now this goes for 1 kilometre that we've established from dry land It says connected to dry land on the far side of and it goes on to a little island, right? It goes to a little island. So it goes for 1 kilometer to a little island, right? And you're thinking, what? It doesn't go to the other side. Actually, it does. Because in 1957, they found another kilometer length, very similar to this, that actually went from the island to the other side. So in total, there's 2 kilometers of this over a mile. So you've got one length to an island and you've got another length to an island. That crosses the bog. The bog is basically over a mile wide. So it goes across the bog. So this is what we've got. And again, lots of factors with this. Why are they building it? Right? Now, why are they building it? Why are they building it? Obviously, nobody interrupt because one or two of you might know the answer. Obviously, this was used for hundreds, if not thousands of years. It must have been, with the amount of effort they took to go into making this, right? Tongue in cheek here. So the construction of the roadway required a great deal of labor, comparable with constructing of barrows 1,000, 2,000 years earlier, right? Why are they there now? If you go to Cosmesta Medieval Village, you see walkways like this, and they go across the boggy marshland, and you can see, and it goes across the water, and you can see little frogs and toads and newts and everything swimming around and little fish, right? So you go there for relaxation, to take your dog or walk hand in hand with your boyfriend or your girlfriend or whatever, right? So if you take that concept, why were they creating these an island? Why? Obviously, it's to get permanently from point A to point B via the little island. It makes sense. Well, actually, there's something else about this. We don't have the foggiest why it was constructed, because it was only used for a few years. A few years, I kid you not. So, can you remember? I keep banding on about it, don't I? But I'm not going to go in full detail. Remember that example of a Pacific island? One of my lecturers goes there, Colin Richards, and he sees somebody moving a stone, and they moved it. It's over a kilometer, and the next minute they left it there, and it's probably still there now. And he wondered, why did you move a stone from point A to B? Why didn't you do anything about it? And he went in the pub the next day, and they said the process of moving the stone is why they did it. It's the process. It's the same as somebody going jogging. It's the same as somebody going to see a prostitute. It's the same as somebody going to the cinema. It's the same as somebody just going out with friends. We do it because we do it, right? Why do we need answers? We just do it, right? And why couldn't they have done this in the past? Why couldn't they have had leisure time? Why couldn't they have done this because they wanted to create it? So, some of the smaller tuchas would have made sense. They were going to. They add these little tuckers into the marshy areas because they wanted to fish, or they wanted to do various different things. Or they might wanted to get to the birds and different things. But there is a growing sense that these were not structures designed to cross the bog, but to get into the bog, right? To get into the bog. They probably had no idea the island was there, and they just decided, by the way, boys and girls, we've got an island here. We can have a packed lunch here. We'll finish for today, right? And interesting enough, this was created in a few months. In a few months. 1 kilometer length. And we don't know about the other kilometer because they were obviously doing it from the other end. But they wouldn't have known, right? So forget about the other one. But this was created in about a few months. So they stockpiled the material over a few weeks, right? Because when you're stockpiling material in the past, which is green, if you leave it around long enough, this is one thing I learned about the medieval period. If you leave green material around long enough, somebody's going to use it for something else. So you can't leave it around for too long because somebody else is going to use it. So you're going to use it as I said, on the 1st of December, as you're cutting the stuff down in November, you're already building it, because as you're cutting down a tree, you don't want someone else to bugger off with the timber, right? You're using it, right? So, again, getting excited about these massive structures across the Collier Bog landscape trackway. It's very much, is this ritual or ceremony? I'm saying no. Is it about entertainment? What's that got to do with entertainment? Or is it about other things that we don't rightly understand? Or do we need answers? Why do we always need bloody answers for the past? You know what I mean? This is one thing historians said to me once. They said, why do archaeologists need answers for everything? You know, just get over it. They did these things. And he's right. You know, we always want answers. Why the hell does Anne look at a family tree? Why bother? You know, but she does it because she likes doing it, right? Why does Henry go to different parts of the world? He likes doing it. That's what he does. Why does Gough go to Madeira every year and bring me back some Madeira cake? He goes because he goes. Why did the soldiers march into Damascus in 1917? Captured under an image. They're there because they're there. We don't always need answers, right? But we do know, whatever its purpose, the roadway was unusual, was usable for only a few years, probably less than 10 years. Gradually covered by the rising bog and sinking under its own weight, it was covered by the bog within a decade, and perhaps less, where it remained preserved for over 2,000 years. I think that's absolutely amazing. However, I know somebody wants to come in and say something, but if they could keep that a moment, the Collier trackway, seemingly constructed in a few months. It was constructed in a few months, end of. You can't leave the material lying around because it would dry out. It's going to be no good to use on the bog. It's going to crack quite quickly. Some people suggest this is to do with the Toch Mar Etten, which is the wooing of Etten, which is an Irish legend where King Eoch Arem sets somebody called Midir with planting a forest and building a road across a bog where none had ever been before, at a place called Mon Lamreg in Ireland. Well, okay, myth or legend or whatever that is. But the whole point of that is creating a road across a bog. We do it because we did it, and that's it. We created it. What's next? We'll do that thing over there, right? Who knows why we do things? This can't be compared with why are we at war with different countries, right? It's more in the line of why do people run in the London Marathon every year after year? Why do they half die getting into a car going on a drag race? They do it. And this is seemingly, we don't really need answers. And that is the point. We don't always need answers to these things. You know, in lots of these classes, we say, oh, you know, we're not going to get answers to these, but we don't need them. We really don't. Right. Anyway, let's move on to something else. Now, hopefully we're going to get through this all tonight, and Pat will be able to get to bed.
Thank you.
At 9:30. We got 3 points actually. No, you got to go at 9:30. Shut up, you. Right, so where we go.
Let's go. Experiment that went wrong. They did it, but it didn't work, did it? So
yeah, but that means that the Irish are a dopey race because they created hundreds of these things. They did loads of them.
Yeah, well,
remember the Tochas here. There's dozens of them, right? And there's obviously 2 of these specific types, right? And there's loads of bogs across Ireland. Lots of these we haven't found. Right, anyway, Anne. Anne, were you going to say something? Say it now, darling.
I forgot.
Good. Right, okay then. You know, the best way when you have a conversation with somebody, you want the conversation to be over and done with, you interrupt them in mid-flow and they can't remember what they're talking about.
I was going to say,
go.
It's very flat. The landscape is very flat, and they built a canal because my cousin could ride on her bike from Athlone to Langford, and
yeah.
It was, you know, it's a long straight canal.
Obviously, we've got these straight lengths.
I don't know. How do you make a canal? That's concrete, I think.
Well, you can make a canal out of anything. Right, anyway, carrying on. Now, the reason I'm showing you some gold objects from Barry Island. No, I'm showing you some gold objects from Cumbria, right? And these are really nice gold objects in an odd place. And the reason why we don't really think of Cumbria as having loads of gold, but these gold objects are from Cumbria. And the detail is quite exquisite. Look at that. Now, an unusually late Bronze Age hoard, all of gold, and you've got discs like this. There's 3 of them. There we go. And you've got this torque, well, not a torque. You've got a penannular brooch. A penannular bracelet. It's a bracelet. That's the bracelet. So these are relatively small. These discs, right? And there's lots of questions what these are, right? So these discs themselves found in Cumbria, right? And what you've got, four objects. You've got a bronze something there, which we'll have a discussion in a moment. You've got these three objects, and you've got this sort of penannular bracelet, as it were, right? A perfect bracelet there. And these rings, they're known as lock rings, right? Forget about the word lock, but let's have a look at this. So the hoard was found by two metal detectorists tucked into a small hollow in the limestone bedrock and covered over with a large stone.
Oh.
Two of the lock rings and the bracelet are stained with organic residue, possibly from something in the soil or something that was placed with or around the objects at the time of their deposition. And these were obviously reported to the Fines Liaison Officer of Cumbria as Stuart Loon. So that's also interesting for us as well. That there. And the reason why, they're saying that this is a copper alloy fragment, appears to be part of a bangle or strap. But that looks to me familiar to part of small bronze cauldron, right? That's what that looks like to me. Now, we know of an object like this being found in East Sussex, and the lock rings themselves, those beautiful lock rings and the other one, examples like this have been found in Lancashire. Now, wonderful objects these, and let's discuss them as well. So the purpose of these kinds of artifacts is much debated, very much debated, and obviously lock rings is probably something that you've never sort of come across at all, Now, they're usually found in pairs, okay? So therefore, as they've usually been found in pairs, were they for some kind of ear decoration? 2 ears? It makes sense, doesn't it? They're from the Bronze Age. They're from at least 3,000 years ago. Or are they to do with some kind of bun hair decoration, right? Or are they for something that we don't rightly understand? But so these newly discovered examples, decorated, and you can see there the beautiful concentric rings. Look at that. You can obviously get an idea of the scale there. These would be fairly big earrings, but if they were, you could probably put them over sort of chunks of skin there or whatever. However this worked. So you can see the concentric rings almost wire-like there, with all three of these. So obviously these two are pairs. These two are a pair, while the third is a smaller lock ring. It is actually much smaller. There we go. It's much smaller. Although the design is similar to the other two, and it's suggested that all of these these three objects, these lock rings, are all created by the same person, because they're all of similar design. And maybe the other one, don't know. Maybe they lost it. We don't know. Clues can also be gleaned from the hoard's location. The find spot lies in an isolated high place on a prominent ridge. There seems to have been an area visited throughout later prehistory. I've got to be honest with you, living in Cumbria for a short while, everything seemed to be up off the ground, but this was higher than normal. So this is situated by a number of prehistoric sites. And what they've got nearby, they've found some roughed out stone axes. When you say roughed out, they haven't been polished from the Langdale axe factory from the Neolithic period. So rather interesting. So it's on some kind of routeway, and bronze axes have been found nearby as well. So is all this linked? Now, the wonderful thing about this is that sometimes we can overdo the sort of ritual and ceremony bit, but it's found near an enclosed platform, and the the portable antiquity officer Stewart, he goes as follows. He says this: it appears that the site may have been of ritual importance, a place where offerings could be placed, or buried in the ground, or even inserted into the limestone outcrops, and which it could be speculated may have hosted gatherings and celebrations. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to reply to this. I'm going to reply to this in the following way. Why are they burying gold? Right? If it's so valuable, why are they burying it? Right? And obviously you've got these 5 objects all together. And I when I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, well, why can't they have been buried at different times? So the penannular bracelet, the circular object there, that may have actually been buried later or earlier. The 3 other objects, they're probably undoubtedly buried at the same time. And the other thing there, bronze cauldron or bronze artifact of some description, it says copper alloy. Now I'm struggling with the word copper alloy because it's either bronze or brass, because there's no gold in it and there's no silver in it. You're not going to be using iron, so okay, it looks like a bit of a bronze cauldron to me. And a small bit of a bronze cauldron, right? And don't know anything more than that, but I think that was a nice little look at a small little hoard from Cumbria. And again, it's great to be looking at other parts of the country. Now, we're coming close to where I wanted to be. And we showed this the other week. This is an interesting bit of trackway from the Thames landscape. Hang on a minute, where are we there? There we go, near Belmarsh Prison, right? Near Belmarsh Prison. So that trackway that we've just seen, which hopefully my notes will come up on my screen now. This is very different from this. So early Neolithic trackways, there's two running into each other there in the floodplains of the Thames. So excavations in 2008 on the site of a proposed new prison at Belmarsh found the heavily decayed remains of 2 superimposed early Neolithic trackways. These structures, which are radiocarbon dated to the first, so basically, if I get the date, about 5,000 years ago, comprise some of the earliest structures yet encountered in the London basin, which would be marshy, boggy, floody, perfect for putting these trackways. The trackways were found towards the base of a peat sequence, immediately above gravels. So obviously this was preserved because peats then eventually covered it. So this was used to cross the peaty marshy landscape, and eventually the peats covered it and preserved it. So what they've got, they've understood that this is a very interesting find and sheds light on a landscape that we don't really understand in the Thames Valley. And obviously this might link to structures and other uses of the landscape that we don't rightly understand. And the other name for this is Gavin's Track. And I tell you what, that was a bugger just to find that information that I got in front of me, because I couldn't find anything about Gavin's Track anywhere. So what we're going to do next is sometimes oh, this is actually the last piece today, so that's fine. Sometimes I struggle to find what I want, right? Other times I find things that I'm struggling to find what I want, and I actually find something completely different, and I think, oh, that's good, we'll have that instead. So this is what's happened here. So this trackway itself is to be found, hang on, not at Belmarsh Prison, it's to be found at Thorne and Hatfield Moors, up in the sort of northeastern bit of England. Now this itself, this wonderful discovery, was discovered in 2004, and we believe this dates back to 5,000 years ago, making it again one of the oldest trackways ever discovered in Britain, again from the Neolithic period, possibly maybe running all the way into the Bronze Age as well. So if we look at this, and it was found by somebody looking in a ditch, and they found these stakes, and this is how it's constructed. Very, very interesting. Very, very different the way this is constructed than anything else. So the context of this is on the moors, a peat mire, which is like a boggy, sort of wet, marshy landscape. And the moors had been drained. And they started, as the landscape had been drained, people were sort of putting drainage ditches and ploughing and finding these timbers in it. You can see some in the screen there, some more being excavated. So what they're doing now, they're restoring the landscape. So if there's any more of these across the landscape, hopefully they might preserve for a much longer period of time. Again, we may have hundreds of these found across the two islands, but there are thousands out there still to be found. Some may never be found because the peat landscapes have been drained. Some will be found, but that's another story. So the other thing as well is we know that the peat across this landscape has been used for fuel and compost since the Bronze Age. And the landscape of this has been an industrial landscape up until the late 1900s. And therefore, what they're trying to do is restore the landscape. And finding the archaeology is greatly enhancing their understanding of uses for this landscape at Hatfield. And there we go. In October 2004, a number of wooden poles were discovered by a local man, Mick Oliver, who was walking across the site. And obviously what he was seeing was in this trench, he found these timbers in there. So great. Love it. Love it. And the site is sometimes known as Oliver Track. So I mentioned last week, lots of these trackways that found are named after the people that find them. So Anne, if you found a track, you could call it Annie's Track. It's also known as a Lindholm Track. So there's lots of different, you can type this into the internet, the Lindholm Track, Oliver Track, and so on. So they've excavated it, and so far they've worked out that there's 45 meters of it, extending from dry land across a shallow pool to a wooden platform. Again, this idea that it's going somewhere, it's going into a landscape. It's almost bringing out there to us rather than us going into that type of concept. So a nice bit of information here, and sort of we sort of think about what these things were for, and then we'll call it a day. So what happened is that when this was originally created 5,000 years ago, the peat was only just beginning, right? So when they set this across the landscape, across the reeds and the marshes, the peat was only creating, it was only clogging itself up. So what they've got is they've got proper radiocarbon dates for this, which date this at least to around 5,470 years ago, which is a lot older than just 5,000 years ago. So they think it's a lot earlier than 5,000 years ago to 5,470 years ago. So again, these are some of the first bits of evidence within this landscape, and the earliest foci. You can see that this the earliest foci for what they were doing is then eventually this being overtaken by the peat that this is crossing. And then because this was preserved in peat, naturally, this is why we get these timbers perfectly preserved today. And you can ask, do they find many artifacts with some of these trackways? Sometimes they don't, because people just walked across them, right? So these are perfectly being preserved within the wetland environment. So what we've got is the timbers here in front of us are mainly Scots pine. And what we've got is other uses of birch as well. So the trackway itself, no more than 50 meters, timber trackway leading north from Lindholm Island, just out there to another sort of wooden sort of structure that's been created, some kind of crannog. And it's rather interesting that it's going to some kind of a platform. It just goes to a platform. That nobody's living on the platform. It goes to the platform. Are they placing things in the mud and the boggy landscape? Not in the way that we found lots of things, right? Or much at all. So the assessment demonstrated that although the wood is decaying, right, it's still in relatively a good state that you can actually see it. So the trackway to the platform were built of locally available wood, as we've known. We've mentioned the birch and the likes of the Scots pine, and the design of the trackway narrows at the platform edge. So it gets narrower as it's reaching the platform. So if we go back to the other image, as it's going out, it narrows, right? It narrows. Why does it narrow? Rather interesting. Why does it really narrow? So you could think that we really understand what this is about. And when you go to the platform, you get a specific visual of the landscape. You're going into the landscape, going to this little island that's been created, and you're going likewise back. And one person writes here that in a way, when you're going into this, yeah, you've got a forced perspective of the landscape, quite deep there. And the landscape is in a way controlling you, and you are controlling the landscape by walking on this walkway. And it's saying that it's almost because it narrows as it gets to the platform. You can only have a certain number of people walking across this, because you do actually slowly get to single file. So you couldn't have 3 or 4 people walking along here, because eventually you narrow to get to this platform. The location of the trackway is significant in that it is not situated closer to the drier land. It is situated in a very different way than any of these other walkways. But when you get access to this, you've got an interpretation that it's a man-made structure, and the words that come into this, the first time I've seen this, but as you get to the platform, it's almost as if you're going to see a performance or be part of a performance, or there's some kind of entertainment going on there. And you're talking about Bronze Age, Neolithic, and you're thinking about, I've never heard these terms entertainment and performance used in a Neolithic or Bronze Age context. I've not used these terms. It may sound odd. Of course they had somebody like William Shakespeare. Did they? And I made this point last night, right? I made this point last night. If William Shakespeare had never, right, if none of William Shakespeare's work had ever, was ever, right, start again. If none of William Shakespeare's work had ever survived, if all the theatres in London were burnt down and we didn't have a trace of them, right, would we be saying that there was no entertainment in medieval London and Tudor London? Would we be saying that, right? Because no evidence has survived. But in this case, we've got a weird little platform. Is it about entertainment, and is it about performance? Although no contemporary parallels can be drawn from other trackways regarding the interpretation of their use and this use, comparisons can be made to more modern cultural traditions, rituals, ceremonies, performances. The idea of going to a platform, visiting the platform, thinking about wading birds going out there on the walkways at Cosmeston or wherever you're going, right? This is all very, very relevant. And finally, for now, these are going to be preserved. And as the landscape is very much, being reverting back to nature, and they're doing something about this. So some of it could be preserved in situ, some of it could be placed into museums and put on display. In 2017, the trackway was designated a scheduled protected ancient monument. It's on the at-risk register, and it's constantly monitored, and it's constantly kept an eye upon. So guess what? That today is the end of our presentation today. We did start a little bit earlier today. That's great. So we got the timbers there, and looking there at our walkway, and there's where it is in Hatfield. So what we're going to do, we're going to call that a day, and let's see if there's any questions. Before Henry asks, am I absolutely exhausted? Yes, I am. I don't know why, but you've worn me out, Anne. Date might be 6,000 years. So for this one, we've just done. I think that's what Henry's saying. So that would make it the very earliest trackway that's been preserved anywhere in Britain. Right. Before we go on to anybody else, let's talk about anything from you, Richard.
No, really interesting subject. As you say,
Good.
it's trying to work out what these things are for, and it's pretty difficult, I think, to work out.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Interesting.
Thank you. Thank you. Right. Okay, Pat, anything from you?
No, I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, you can't leave yet because it's not half past. Right, Adam.
No, nothing to add, Carl. Thanks very much. Very good.
My pleasure. And next week we'll be doing something more lighter next week. I know I haven't done the three of you, but I'll tell you what we're doing next week. I'm gonna remind myself to make sure I do this next week. And I do believe we're going to be looking at oh God, I did tell them something last night. I think we're going to be looking at pottery and at artifacts, something quite light next week, but that should be good. Right. Anything from you, Goff?
No, there's no questions. So thanks for bringing all those images and all that information together. It was good the way you flirted from different parts of Great Britain. Yes, very good. Thanks. Even got
my pleasure.
Well,
my pleasure as always. Thank you, Goff. Right, Henry.
The only thing that obviously goes, I don't want to go down the spiritual road, but the link between land and water being a key element.
Yeah. Well, when you think about these boggy landscapes, and boggy landscapes and all the rest of it, obviously, water is a massive element there, as we see with Flag Fen and so on, and the Sweet Track. But yeah, the link between land, controlling water. Now, who tried to control water? King Canute. And you think that as something from, what was it, 1036 or whatever. This is thousands of years on, but that idea of controlling water, taming water, or water taming us, because water and the muds eventually take these things away. So there's a certain control that Mother Nature has got. Anything else, Henry?
No, that's it. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. And finally, Annie.
Yeah, I was thinking of the Iron Age. And is it the Iron Age or some age that you threw votive offerings into water as a spiritual practice, and this idea of controlling the water. This is something different, controlling the water. So it could be like a mountain, the equivalent of standing on a mountain.
Or bringing the mountain to Muhammad.
Yeah.
Because some are going to islands. So you're bringing the island closer to us. You're getting to the island, but now you can walk through it. You're bringing the island to us. It's no longer a watery domain between the land and the island. The island is now being brought to us, or we're being dragged to the island. Is it Muhammad going to the mountain, or the mountain going to Muhammad? So you've got that sort of contact, that sort of context.
It's a very complicated, I think. Well, for us, but for them, they probably knew exactly what they were doing.
Of course.
But it's very interesting. Always more questions and
answers.
More questions and answers, but that's good.
My absolute pleasure. So, shame we didn't have Del tonight, and Peter, and who else was missing? Anyway, nobody else. Who?
Kate sometimes.
Oh no, Kate's online on YouTube, so that's fine.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So right, okay. So what I'm going to find out, if there's nothing anyone else wants to say, we'll be back next Wednesday as usual. Thanks for your continued support. So nobody else wants to say anything else, and I'm going to say goodnight to Goth, Anne, Pat, Richard, Henry, and Adam. So night, folks.
Okay,
night.
night.
Right.
everyone.
Take care.
Thank
Keep
you.
warm. Keep warm now. Don't catch a
Oh yeah,
cold in
I'll
there.
put more wood on the fire. I will. I'll do that
Okay,
now.
alrighty. Bye.
Night, Pat.
Bye.
Night, Anne. Night, Henry and Anne. You're still there.
Yeah, there was one thing I really did forget. Last week, you wanted entertainment. You remember the one item that they found in Ireland? Musical horns.
No, go on, Anne. Can you send that to me by email?
I think we had it last week.
Did
Came up.
we? Something about a horn came up in my Tuesday class yesterday. I think somebody mentioned it, but we didn't actually go into detail. Musical horns.
And I think I found one in the Kerry Museum, actually. There's a...
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
Go into the Kerry Museum. There's actually a horn, which is from the Bronze Age.
Oh, what's it made of?
I don't know.
Oh.
Let's go and have a look.
Oh, go on, then.
Let's go there. Oh, and I sent you something on an even earlier trackway is just a completely red herring.
Oh, no.
The
Well,
420 million year old one.
420 million year old trackway. Which country's that in?
That's in County Kerry.
Hang on. How old? 420,000.
There's the Liscrow bronze horn circa 3000 BC. Spelled Lissroe.
Spell that again.
Lissroe.
Lissord. And that's the Lissord horn.
It's bronze horn, yeah, and it's in the Kerry Museum. And they put it down as being something used in religious or ceremonial occasions or a way of a trumpet.
Well, okay, fair enough. Going into battle with a horn.
It would have been great skill to have played a musical instrument. That's what it says. So
yeah,
your entertainment. Yeah. It was just rounding off your entertainment for.
Yeah, you again. That's another point, isn't it? We don't think about musical instruments and entertainment and podiums, and we're thinking, well, this must have started somewhere, right? We can't be the only ones to watch Shakespeare plays. We can't be the only ones to watch a bit of Harold Pinter, or we can't be the only ones to watch Elvis Presley. You know, they must have had some forms of entertainment, you know.
That was just a passing thought.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. I see what you're saying. I'm with you. So
right,
okay, brilliant.
I'll leave you.
And I'm gonna have a lie down.
Yeah, you have a lie down, and I promise not to send you anything for next week.
Well, you can send me stuff about pottery if you want. If there's any decent Irish Bronze Age pottery.
I did send you that Cypriot stuff.
Yeah, but that's not in Ireland, though, is it? Oh, we actually used some of that in one of the lectures, but you weren't there.
Yeah, I've got the leaflet here.
Yeah, but we've already used it, man.
Oh, right. Okay, we won't go down that road then.
No, because we've already been down there. We've already been down that trackway. Bronze Age. We don't want Cypriot Bronze Age pottery being found in Ireland, because if you do, right, it's going to screw everything up, because that would be revolutionary.
Let me have a look. I'll see what I come up with.
Oh, please don't. They got there by aliens. And then finally, And so the date might be 6,000 years old for the Hatfield one.
Plumstead, it's I've come up with the track. It's in Plumstead.
Never heard of it.
Near Plumstead is near Belmarsh Prison.
Oh, Plumstead. So it's called the Plumstead Track, is it?
It's 4,100 BC.
6,000 years ago. Yeah. Fair play. That's quite a good one.
And they left a 50p coin underneath it.
Well, that dates it then, doesn't it?
Right.
With 4,000 years BC, and was it an image of Lloyd George? I knew I'd get it in there somewhere. Thought it would be.
Right, I'll leave you to it.
Okay, thank you for that, Henry. I'll see you next week. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Keep doing the research. Bye. Thanks for that. Bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. I don't. Well, there's 5 people on YouTube. We haven't had much people saying anything, so that's a shame. Well, there's nothing come up. I haven't got anything. I'm just going to double check to see if there is any messages or anything. There. Nothing in the chat box. Nothing. Right, we'll call that a day now. Anyway, anyway, thanks for joining us. Don't forget, people out there, don't forget to like and subscribe. We're going to look at the chat box. Donations there to PayPal as well. It's there on the screen, karl-james@hotmail.com. Really appreciate that. Or buy me a coffee. Right, that's there as well. That's in the box down below. And yeah. Right, let's have a quick look at the chat box. His date might be 6,000 years. No, not the one at Hatfield, at the one at date might be 6,000 years. That's the one in near Thames Basin. That's the what's he saying? Plumstead. Anyway, night, folks. Night. Like and subscribe, or even join. Blue button down below. Join.